Hello ladies, gentlemen, and persons in between. My name is Tim Snowborn, this is Gypsy, and we're here to talk about mindfulness on this episode of Serious Issues. I was gonna do something about technology because it feels like I haven't done a technology video in a while apart from my comments about it on the Altered Carbon review, but I couldn't find a technology story that I really felt like talking about for 5 to 10 minutes, so I thought, fuck it, I'll sit here and talk about something else that I think about a lot, which is kind of ironic because mindfulness is largely about not thinking too much. I don't claim to be an expert on mindfulness. Keep in mind that everything I'm about to say is just my understanding of it. I'm going to be borrowing a lot from books like Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance and The Power of Now, along with other New Age psychobabble that has formed my understanding of mindfulness. So put simply, mindfulness is all about staying focused on the present moment, the cutting edge of time. Because most of us don't do that. Most of us aren't focused on the here and now. Most of us are only peripherally aware of our surroundings. We maintain enough awareness of our surroundings to navigate the world without bumping into things, but most of the time, our minds are someplace else. They're on another time or another place. We're thinking about the past or we're thinking about the future. We're making plans for the weekend. We're worrying about a job interview. We're rehearsing a conversation we want to have or reliving a conversation we already had. Or if you're like me, you're singing songs in your head. From the Buddhist/New Age point of view, most of our thinking is extraneous and pointless, and it just feeds our ego and prevents us from realizing that there's no real separation between you and me and the world around us. The veil of thoughts and beliefs and opinions is what convinces us that there is a separate me and a separate you, when in reality, you, me, and the world around us are really undivided. Fully understanding that there is no real separation between the person you think is in here and the world that you think is out there, fully understanding that is to become enlightened. And the thing is, you can't think your way to enlightenment. You can't reason your way to enlightenment. Enlightenment isn't something you reach through a logical thought process. Enlightenment comes before thought. Enlightenment is at the cutting edge of time before thought takes place. Mindfulness comes at least partly from the idea that the present moment, the cutting edge of time, is the only time that has ever or will ever exist. The past doesn't exist except in our memories, and the future doesn't exist except in our plans. Not that they believe that the past never happened or the future never will. What they're saying is that when the past happened, at that time, it wasn't the past, it was now. When the future happens, it won't be the future, it will be now. And we have records of the past, but those records are not themselves the past. They are records. We have plans for the future, and those plans may indeed come to fruition, but those plans are not the future. They are plans. And now here comes Phaedrus to join us. If you accept the premise that the past has no real existence, then it doesn't matter how far into the past you go. A year ago doesn't exist. An hour ago doesn't exist, a minute ago doesn't exist, a second ago doesn't exist, a nanosecond ago doesn't exist. And that's where things get interesting, because everything that you see is technically, I think it's 80 milliseconds in the past. It takes about 80 milliseconds for the light to hit the object that you're looking at, bounce into your eye, and have your brain label it what it is. It takes about 80 milliseconds for your brain to tell you that this is a cat. Isn't that right, Phaedrus? Who's 80 milliseconds in the past? You are. You're 80 milliseconds in the past. If everything that you see is technically 80 milliseconds in the past, and the past is unreal, then everything that you see is not real. And if the idea that time doesn't exist blows your mind, remember that if time doesn't exist, neither does space, because time and space exist on a continuum. Time is just a measurement of how long it takes to get from here to there. And that's why mindfulness is seen as being so important in Eastern religions and philosophies, because that's where enlightenment is. Enlightenment, again, isn't something you can think your way to. Enlightenment is before thought. Enlightenment is at the cutting edge of time before intellectualization takes place, before your mind labels reality as you see it. So how do we become mindful? Well, again, mindfulness is all about paying attention to where you are. Because again, most of us aren't paying attention to where we are. Most of us are thinking about something else. Mindfulness is about not thinking about something else. It's about paying close attention to where you are and what you are doing. It's about paying close attention to your senses, paying close attention to what you can see, what you can smell, what you can hear. Mindfulness has gained popularity in recent years as a treatment for anxiety, depression, anger, and a host of other mental health issues. If you're having an anxiety attack, one of the things they tell you to do is try to ground yourself by focusing on, okay, what can I hear? Let me count things that I can hear. What can I smell? What textures can I touch? What textures are within my reach? You're probably not going to count the number of things you can see because you're probably in an environment where there's just tons and tons of things you can see. But what you could do is you could count colors or shapes. How many blue things can I see? How many triangles? How many curved lines? Grounding yourself in this way is an often prescribed method for dealing with anxiety. One of the ways that you can think about mindfulness and try to be mindful is to imagine that you're an alien from another planet and you've never seen any of this stuff before. You've never seen any of this architecture, these creatures, the clothing, the vehicles. All of this is new to you. Imagine if you went to an alien planet and you saw all the plants and the animals and the people and the vehicles and the architecture and so forth. You would just be staring at all of that because it's all completely different and new to you. You have to try to pretend that that's you now. You have to pretend that you're an alien from another planet and you've never seen any of this stuff before. That's why new experiences rejuvenate our minds. Everything from trying a new food to traveling to another country, especially traveling to another country. If you can go someplace you've never been before and look at how the buildings and the clothes and the food and everything are so different from what you're used to back home, then it forces your mind to pay closer attention to where and when you are. When you travel, you stop thinking about the stuff that normally is on your mind every day. You stop thinking about your job or your relationship or things you have to do or plans for the weekend or whatever, and you pay more attention to where you are and what you see and what you're doing, because it's all unique. It's harder to be mindful in a very familiar environment. You just take everything for granted. That's why it's important to try new things. Try a food you've never eaten. Take a different path to work. Listen to music you've never heard before. Trying new things makes you more mindful. It puts your mind in the present moment because you're focusing on this new thing that you've never experienced before. That's why I'm a believer in LSD and magic mushrooms. I haven't done either of those things in at least a few years, but what they do is they kind of force your mind into the present moment. They force you to focus on your environment. They force you to focus on the world around you because everything seems fresh and new. You stop taking your environment for granted and realize how miraculous everything is. Everything seems like a miracle when you're on LSD or mushrooms. You're thoroughly amazed at the objects, processes, and events that we normally don't even think twice about. Another way to be mindful is just to pay close attention to what you are doing, regardless of what it is. If you are washing your hands, you could pay attention to the temperature of the water and how it feels as it flows across your hands, the scent of the soap, the motion of your hands as you scrub, the swirl of the water as it goes down the drain. If you're chopping something up, you could pay attention to the color and texture of the thing you're chopping up, the feel of the knife in your hand, the feel of the blade as it goes through the thing that you're chopping up, the sound of things frying in a pan, the smells, of course, tastes as you're taste testing as you go along, paying close attention to your senses is a big part of mindfulness, and you can do that with just about anything you're doing. The hard part for me is making it a habit. I know what mindfulness is, but it's hard to make it a habit. I've got a couple of bracelets that I got in Korea, and I wear those to kind of remind myself to be mindful. Like every time I look at them, I remember, okay, let's take a few seconds to be mindful. And I can only be mindful for a few seconds at a time. Again, I have such ADD that I start singing a song in my head, or just my brain gets very bored very quickly. The ego wants to be fed. The ego doesn't like silence and tranquility. It wants to sing songs or solve problems or go over a conversation that you've already gone over in your head 1,000 times before. It doesn't want to just sit there and do nothing. So that's all I got for today. Tell me what you think. Do you think mindfulness is important? Have you ever heard of it before? Do you practice mindfulness? How much time do you usually spend lost in thought miles away, and how much time do you spend paying attention to where you are and what you are doing and the environment around you? By the way, I want to remind everyone that the end of this month is my 1-year anniversary on YouTube, and I am 1 subscriber away from 50. I'm almost halfway to triple digits. Woohoo! So if you know somebody who might like my stuff, please show them whichever of my videos you think they'd be most interested in and try to get them to subscribe. Shooting for 50 at the 1-year mark here. Thank you very much for joining me for this conversation. If this is your first time on my channel, welcome. It's great to have you here. I'd love to have you subscribe and join me for future conversations, and check out my previous videos for more. If you're a current subscriber, welcome back. It's great to have you tuning in again. I really appreciate your continued support. Thanks again for joining me, everyone. Take care.